The Moon and the Marshland. A long time ago, many parts of the country were covered in marshland. Great pools of water that trickled green, and bogs that heavily pulled you down if you were foolish enough to step into them. In those days, the moon shone high in the sky just as she does now, and under her watchful gaze, she lit up the bog pools, so people could walk through the marshes almost as safely as they could during the day. But when the moon didn't shine, things that hid in the darkness came out wishing to harm those foolish enough to leave the safety of their hearth and home. Will-o'-the-wisps, bogles, and worse. One night, the moon overheard two people talking about what happened in the dark, and she was very troubled at the thought. She decided, I will see for myself. Perhaps things are not as bad as they make out. At the end of the month, the moon wrapped herself in her black cloak and hood, then stepped down from the sky. She went to the edge of the marshland and looked around. She was surrounded by darkness. All that was reflected in the pools of water were the stars and the light that came from her own white feet just underneath the cloak. The moon felt a little uneasy, as there was a hint of danger hidden deep in the stillness of the marsh. She tightened her cloak and began to walk forward, determined to see if people were right to fear going out into the dark. As the moon neared a black pool, the wet ground beneath her feet made her slip. Instinctively, she put her hands out to grab the sparse foliage nearby. Unexpectedly, the branches came to life. They twisted and turned around her wrists, holding her fast. Unable to move, the moon trembled in the dark, wondering if help would come. She heard the sound of someone calling far away, distant cries for help that turned into desperate sobs. The sound came closer and closer through the darkness, until the moon was able to make out the shape of a man heading towards her. As he got nearer, she could see the fear on his face. He must have strayed in the bogs and followed her flickering light, hoping it meant safety. From where she was captive, the moon could see the man was heading towards a deep hole in the bog. She felt fear and anger rise within and began to struggle harder to escape. The moon couldn't get free, but she twisted and turned until her black hood fell back, revealing her shining golden hair. A beautiful light shone from her hair, and it drove away the darkness, revealing the danger to the man. When everything lit up, the man cried with joy. He immediately knew how to get out of the marsh, and no longer feared he might bump into something evil in the dark. The hidden creatures that had whispered in the darkness, misguiding his footsteps, shrunk away from the light. The man was in such a hurry to get away that he never gave a thought to where the guiding light came from. The moon, however, did not mind. She was so happy that the man had escaped from danger, she forgot the peril she herself faced. Off the man clambered, sobbing with joy as he fled out of the terrible bog. Remembering her predicament, the moon tried her hardest to escape captivity, but the harder she tried to pull free, the stronger the branches held her. Exhausted, she fell on her knees, and before she knew what was happening, her black hood slipped forward, covering her head again, leaving the marshland in darkness once more. Out of the blackness, the evil spirits stirred. Howling and screeching with delight, now their ancient enemy was at their mercy. Here was the moon, the one who forced them to hide in darkened corners. They grabbed, scratched and taunted her. "A curse upon you," said a marsh witch, "spoiler of our spells." The bogle screeched, "Denier of the dark. Now you can't make us hide away in darkened corners." With that, All the evil things began to laugh. The marshland shook and gurgled with the horrible noise.
"We'll poison her,"
shrieked the witches. All around, the evil creatures gleefully laughed once more.
"We'll smother her,"
whispered the crawling, slithering, dark things that came out of the bog. They wrapped themselves around the moon's knees. The evil crowd laughed again. They began to crowd around their captive. The moon could do nothing as they began to squabble and fight over what they should do to her. The vile creatures argued so long they didn't notice the grey light of dawn begin to appear in the sky. Looking up, they panicked. They had run out of time as darkness would soon be gone. The moon realised what was going on and struggled harder to escape, but horrid bony fingers grabbed her and quickly laid her deep in the marsh. The Bogles fetched a strange big stone and rolled it on top of the moon to stop her escaping. It was agreed that 2 will-o'-the-wisps would take turns to watch the prison, just to make sure she did not escape. Days passed, and people got ready for the moon to appear in the sky once more. They put pennies in their pockets and straw in their caps. The new moon was always a time of promise and expectation. They were always glad when she appeared and the dark time had passed. For as far back as folk could remember, the moon had always been a good friend to the marsh folk. She drove away the dark and protected them at night with her blessed light. But the new moon did not come, and as each night passed, darkness fell and brought dread over the marshlands. Without the moon, evil became brave. Creatures howled and screeched in the night, while people huddled in fear in their homes, too afraid to venture out in the dark. They couldn't understand why the moon was no longer in the night sky, and worried what had happened to her. Eventually, people got together and decided they would go see the wise woman who lived in the old mill. Surely she would know where the moon had gone. The wise woman looked in her brew pot, and in the mirror, and in her book. "Well," she said, "that is odd." She mumbled. "I can't tell you what's happened to the moon. It's dark, so dark. I can see nothing in my spells. If you hear of anything, come by and tell me straight away. Anyway, put a pinch of salt, a straw and a button on your doorsill at night, and the horrors won't come over it, light or no light." Dejected, the marsh people left for home. Night followed night with still no sign of the moon, and as you can imagine, people talked and talked about it. Tongues wagged at home, at the inn, in the fields, even when fishing and hunting. Then one day at an inn, when everyone was sharing their ideas on what had happened to the moon, a man who lived at the far end of the marshland suddenly jumped up. "Hey, I know," he shouted. "I'd clean forgotten, but I reckon I know where the moon might be. A while back I was lost in the bogs, and I feared there was a goner. Just as I'd given up hope, there was a strange light and I could see my way out of the bog. I was in such a hurry to get away I'd forgot what I'd seen. I can't be sure, mind you. My mind might have been playing tricks, but now that I think on it, it looked like the light of the moon. But I swear I saw a shining face with golden hair." Without waiting to finish their drinks, the crowd bolted out of the inn and rushed over to the wise woman's house. The man told her his story. The wise woman slowly stared into the pot, then into the book, then into the mirror. She nodded her head. "Ah, it's still too dark. I can't see a thing. But do as I tell you and you'll soon find out for yourselves. Go all of you just before night gathers. Put a stone in your mouth and take a hazel twig in your hands, and make sure you don't say a word till you're safe home again. Walk into the marsh with this protection and you'll find a coffin, a candle and a cross. When you do, the moon will be near. Look around and maybe you'll find her." The people scratched their heads and looked at each other. "Where will we find her? Will the bogles not get us? Who of us should go?" "Stop your havering," the wise woman shouted. "I can tell you no more. Do as I tell you and you've nothing to fear. Otherwise you can stay at home and do without the moon." Night came all too quickly, and the people gathered to set out into the darkness. They were terrified but determined to find the moon. Each one had a stone in their mouth and a hazel twig in their hand. For what seemed an eternity, they staggered and stumbled through marshland, with only starlight to guide them. Cold, wet hands and slithering things brushed against them in the dark. Sighs, screeches and other terrifying noises seemed to follow them through the bog. Suddenly, they stopped in their tracks. Just ahead stood a great stone, half in, half out of the water. It was weirdly shaped and looked like a strange big coffin, and across that stone were two branches. They were tangled together, making a dark, gruesome cross, and on top of the stone sat a will-o'-the-wisp. Its light flickered like a dying candle. The people knelt down in the mud. Silently they said, "Our Lord," in their heads, first forward because of the cross, and then again backwards to keep off the bogles. They knew better than to say anything out loud because of the wise woman's advice. Together they went to the stone and pushed it until it rolled away. As soon as this was done, just for a second, they saw a strange and beautiful face smiling at them from the green, slimy water. Suddenly, a bright light blinded them. Instinctively, everyone jumped back. All around, they could hear the howls and angry wails of things that had been hiding in the dark. Within minutes, people could see again. And there she was, the full moon, back in the sky, bright and beautiful and kind as ever, shining and smiling down at them, beaming so brightly the marshland pathways were as clear as day. It was as if the moon wanted to drive away the darkness and the bogles for good. Happy that they had found the moon, the people returned home with their hearts considerably lighter. And every night since then, the moon has shone brighter and clearer than ever before over the marshland.